Our final speaker from the political panel is from Fianna Fáil and a candidate in Dublin North East. Would you welcome, please, Averil Power?
Hi. I'm conscious that I'm eating into your lunch hour, so I'll try to be as quick as I can as the final speaker. Firstly, just to thank the organisers. I think it's political reform is a hugely important issue in this election, as some of the other speakers have said. I mean, obviously, in the short term, the key priority for whoever the next government is will be to get the economy back on track and both protect current jobs and create new ones. But in the longer term, we do need to change Irish politics quite radically and ensure that there is better planning for the future. And I think it's great that all parties have published political reform proposals. We might disagree in the specifics, but I think everybody accepts the importance of the issue, and I think that's a very positive part of this election. Fianna Fáil's proposals focused mainly on reforming how the Dáil and the government works. We think they're the key areas that are broken at the minute and need to be fixed. The key problems that we see with the current system would be the excessive localism. Poor standard of debate in the Dáil is a big issue, something that comes up with me a lot when I'm canvassing on doorsteps, where people say that they're just fed up of turning on when they watch a Rocks report or even the soundbites that make it to the news in the evening, that they're facing all kinds of problems in their own lives, and then they turn on the television, they just see politicians just shouting at each other, and there seems to be more of a focus on the kind of party political posturing and point scoring rather than actually TDs working together to sort out the problems facing the country. And I think that's something that needs to change. And then the third thing that we think is a key issue is the lack of expertise in cabinet. The reality of our system is that people tend to come from quite a narrow range of backgrounds. There's not a lot of people with business experience elected as TDs. So then, because all of our TDs, all of our ministers are selected from among the Oireachtas, it means that there's a gap there at the cabinet table for expertise. So our proposals focused on changing three things in the main: how TDs are selected, how the Dáil does its daily business, and how the members of cabinet are selected. On the electoral system, what we're proposing is that there'd be a mixed system, so there'd be both a direct link with the people at the local level through single-seat constituencies, which would address some of the issues that Eamon has raised, where these large 3, 4, 5, and I think if you went to 7, personally I think it'd actually be worse, but where the TDs are just competing against each other, and it's almost from the day that they get elected, they spend all their time competing at the constituency and racing each other around to meetings, to funerals, to everything else, just competing on the local issues and not actually having a focus at the national ones. So that's why we're proposing that you'd keep some kind of a direct link, but we think that moving to single seats is important to reduce the localism. And then we're also proposing that there be a national list, because why not have a system where, like, I live in Sutton in Dublin North East, but if I think the best candidate that's addressing my issues at a national level lives in Cork or Mayo or Galway, I should vote for that person. And we want to have a provision there where people can do that, where you can actually have a real national debate and you can vote for the best person putting themselves forward for election, regardless of which part of the country that they live in. So we're proposing a mixed system. And then as part of the national list as well, we're proposing that there would be consideration for gender balance. Because it is one of the problems of Irish politics that at present 1 in 7 TDs are female. It does mean that, personally, I think that it means that there are issues that have never been addressed the way that they should have been. Women are more likely to be the primary carer in the home, worried about childcare, they're more likely to be in part-time employment, to be worried about things like domestic violence. And I think those issues, while men will do their best to represent obviously all of their constituents, I think personal experience plays a large part in a politician's job as well. And the lack of female TDs, I think, is a problem. So we're proposing that that's something that could be addressed in the list. I think you'd give the voters a choice. You put forward a balanced list, and then the voters can vote within that list whether they want a man or woman, but at least you're actually putting forward a mixture of candidates. On the Dáil, the type of change that we want to see is greater input from backbenchers of all parties. And the present system is very cabinet dominated. It means that by the time ministers draw up the legislation, so it's really 15 people that decide what's going to be in legislation. Then by the time it comes before the Dáil, there's a tendency for the relevant minister to kind of stand behind their bill and defend it, and then for the opposition, even if they think it's a good idea, to attack everything in it from kind of a party political point of view rather than a national interest. And one of the things that we're proposing is that before legislation is drawn up, that you'd have a general debate in the Dáil, and ideas from all sides could be taken on board, because I don't think it's actually just a problem of opposition at the minute. There's a lot of government backbenchers who come in with great ideas and then find that they're sitting there and they don't really have a way of inputting them. So we think that it would involve TDs much better, and that at the end of the day you'd get better legislation because it would reflect the best ideas on all sides of the House, and we think that could actually quite radically change the way that the Dáil works. We're also proposing stronger committees and that there be a constitutional referendum to deal with the issue about the Averil case and giving committees the powers that they need. And then after all of that, we think that the Fianna should be abolished, but we think it has to be seen in the context of much greater structural reform, not just kind of throwing out one house and leaving the Dáil the way that it is. We think there needs to be huge reform of the Dáil first, and then you'd have a much more effective single house system. And then finally on Cabinet, the key change that we're proposing in relation to the Cabinet is to have provision for non-TDs to be members of Cabinet so that you get that external expertise in. I think it'd be good to have, there's lots of leading business people who don't want to spend 20, 30 years as a TD to then become a minister, but if they're willing to opt in for 5 years to serve at Cabinet, it'd be good to get that expertise in there. We'd still have a mixture of directly elected politicians at Cabinet, but also provision for external expertise, and then of course with confirmation hearings like they have in the States so that they can be interrogated by all parties in advance. So that's the key changes that we're proposing. Others are on ending corporate donations. Was legislation actually that had been agreed between our two parties on doing that, but it didn't get finished before the Dáil was dissolved. We also want new legislation to protect whistleblowers, stronger public sector reform, local government. I know we scored down on that because we haven't actually published our proposals on local government yet, but they will be over the next 2 days. And then finally on constitutional reform, we're also proposing to have a referendum on the rights of children and to change the reference to women in the home in the Constitution. Thank you.